can see people's ages, and today I met a woman who's 300 years old. Have you ever seen those stupid TikTok trends that have been going around lately? You know, the ones where it's like where the person's 18th birthday and they can choose between two different abilities, and the choices are stupid shit, like being able to see how much money a person has in their bank account or able to see if someone has met their soulmate or not. Well, guess what? I'm the poor sap that has to live with one of those abilities in real life. I can see how old a person is by the shiny white numbers that are floating above their head. It's not glamorous or cool. Okay, I take it back. I'm a blast when I go to the country fair and hit the guess my age stall. I'm being sarcastic if you couldn't tell. My ability is pretty much useless and downright annoying sometimes. I mean, how's a guy supposed to save the world just by knowing how old someone is? What I'm getting at is being able to see people's ages is more of a nuisance than a superpower. The numbers are pretty blinding, and my attention always gravitates to the right above of a person's head, even when I'm not trying to. Now imagine how that looks to a pretty girl you're talking to and all they see is you staring just slightly behind them. I've gotten one too many slaps in the face for doing that. I've always I wasn't always a freak though. There was a period of my life when I was a normal kid with a regular childhood. The seeing people ages thing happened after the near-death experience I had when I was 10 years old. Thankfully, nothing too traumatic happened. I just got stung by a bee and almost drowned in a pool. It was the end of summer, and my parents were hosting an annual back-to-school barbecue. Everyone had just gone inside to escape the sweltering summer heat and eat some good food. As good as my salt is spicy, white parents could whip up, that is. I stayed outside to play by myself a bit since I was only a kid there, and I was always I stayed outside to play by myself a bit since I was only a kid there. It was always my parents, friends, and a few extended family members who went to those parties, none of my friends. The party was mostly for my parents, who were just celebrating having made it through another summer with me. It's not like I was a bad kid or anything, though. Or maybe I was, and I'm just remembering things differently otherwise. Maybe I wouldn't have almost died. I was 10, so my parents didn't worry too much about me playing outside in the backyard by myself. After all, at the age, I was supposed to be a big boy. Anyways, I was out of the pool playing with some random toy when a bee suddenly landed on my hand. The thing you should know about me is that I'm deadly allergic to bees, like carrying around an EpiPen in my pocket at all times, allergic to bees. I froze when I saw it, too scared to do anything. The bee must have been in a bad mood that day because it decided I was a threat and it stung me, even though I hadn't done anything. I swatted the thing off my hand as a hot, steering pain started to radiate through my skin. I stood up after freaking the hell out as I could feel my skin puff up and the sensation of my throat slowly starting to close. In my panic, I hadn't been paying too much attention to my surroundings. One misstep later, and I plummeted into the deep end of our in-ground pool. At least the water was refreshing enough to cool the heat flooding through my veins. In that quick second, I remembered the existence of my EpiPen. I frantically grabbed it for my life-saving medication in my pocket. Feeling what little air supply I had left in my lungs quickly leaving me, my heart sank as I realized my EpiPen wasn't in my pocket anymore. My vision was starting to blur and had become dotted with a bunch of little stars around the edges. I desperately searched around in the water as I continued to sink deeper. Finally, my eyes landed on a white, blue, and orange pen. Resisting the immense urge to breathe in, I reached out for the EpiPen. The first swipe, it just had hit my tips of my fingers. The motion, however, made the pen sink farther away from me. Some bubbles came out of my mouth in an urge of frustration. That wasn't good, seeing as that breath out was about 50% of the oxygen I had left. With all my might, which wasn't much since I had so much oxygen deprived, I managed to swim down and grab my EpiPen. By that point, my vision was almost completely black, and my lips were tingled. Something fierce, blue to the sky, orange to the thigh, I thought to myself as I uncapped the thing and stabbed myself in the leg, praying the medicine would work underwater. After that, all the fight left in me and everything went black and numb. Obviously, I had to die. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today typing this out for you to read. I woke up in the hospital about 2 months later, where the doctor informed me I was less than a minute away from dying when I was rescued. Thank God my mom had a gut feeling and went outside to check on me. To this day, she tells me it was just a little too quiet in the house and I had a bad feeling. My mom found my EpiPen floating on the surface of the pool and my body at the bottom. She jumped in and managed to get me back to the surface, where I coughed up some of the water I swallowed, but stayed unconscious. Turns out my brain lost enough oxygen to go into hibernation mode or something, causing my body to enter into a coma state. It took 2 months for my brain to get its shit together enough for me to handle consciousness. You better think the worst part was coming back from the coma would be all the therapy that came after it. The physical therapy to learn how to walk again and regain control over my limbs. The speech therapy to learn how to talk again. The actual therapy where I had to express all my feelings towards what happened to me. Yeah, all that bullshit sucked ass. Don't get me wrong, to me, though the worst part was everybody asked me what it was like to be in a coma. I'd constantly been berated by the nurses, doctors, and even my parents about what I remembered during my extended slumber, which, by the way, wasn't much. It was mostly black nothingness to sorry. The only thing I vaguely remember was a dream. There was a garden, big and eternal, like every plant invincible to man was planted there, and then some. Plants that had never been seen before to the human eye. It could only be described as beautiful. There was also a woman there who was sweet and motherly like. Her hair was blonde and looked like her hair had been spun by an orb weaver spider. She wore a long white silk dress, and her essence reminded me of a goddess. The most interesting thing about her were her eyes. It's like they changed color every second, never staying in one specific hue. I think we had a conversation, but this all happened a long time ago. But I can't tell you what was said. The dream ended with her kissing my forehead. Before that, when I woke up, After coming out of the coma, I knew something was different about. For one, there were these glimmering white numbers that were pasted above everyone's head. It was also like a new purpose that had been given to my life. All of these years later, I couldn't tell you what it is. Even that feeling of purpose has seemed dim. Having no possible clue what the numbers could mean, I did the reasonable thing any kid would do. Ask the nearest adult, "Hey Dad, what does the number 47 mean?" I wrote it on a notepad and the hospital staff had given me to write since I wasn't able to use my vocal cords correctly yet. My father bunched his eyes in confusion. "What are you talking about, Harry?" I scribbled some more. "The number above your head, the 47. What does it mean?" "Are you sure you're feeling all right?" he asked, eyeing me up and down unconsciously like I had just committed a very serious crime. I nodded my head. I felt fine. I just wanted to know what the damn numbers stood for. Instead of answering my question, Dad left the room to track down the nearest doctor. The rest of that afternoon was spent getting a whole bunch of brain scans done. All of them came back normal. I had no growths, tumors, or brain bleeds that would explain why I was seeing numbers above everyone's head. That night, I sat in the hospital bed feeling dejected. Nobody could explain to me why I was seeing things nobody else saw. My mother was beside me, rubbing my hand, trying to comfort me. The number 45 glimmered over her head. Drowning in self-pity and tired from being poked and pursued all day, I fell asleep. That night, I had a dream about the lady in the garden again. She held me in a tight, warm embrace and then whispered something in my ear. When I woke up the next morning, I felt better, enlightened. "Mom, how old are you?" I scribbled on the closest napkin after she brought me breakfast. "That's an interesting question, dear," she told me. "That's a rude question to ask the lady, but I'm 45. It was then when I knew I could see people's ages. After another month in the hospital, I was finally released and able to go home. What is the first thing you thought I did after coming home from the hospital? Told all my friends my new ability, of course. This, my friends, is my ability started to ruin my life. Nobody believed me, even when I tried to prove it. Nobody even thought it was cool that I was supposedly able to see how old a person was. My friends dumped me, and I became known as a freak who told lies about everything. The bullying was bad too. Oh God, the bullying. Even my teachers got so annoyed at the insistence of my abilities that my parents were called. I got a lecture, and the only thing I learned from it was to keep my mouth shut and don't tell anyone that I was able to see ages. All it would lead to was pain and misery. We eventually moved out of that town, and I got to move schools, and I got a new fresh start to go to school where nobody thought I was weird or a liar. Of course, I didn't dare tell anyone about my ability or my past either. I was never the same after that. I stuck to staying in the shadows. Nobody would notice me if they didn't know I was there after all. To this day, I regret my decision to tell anybody about my curse. My high school came and went, and I graduated. The high school was enough for me, so I didn't move to higher education. Instead, I did the only responsible thing a person in my situation could do: become a bartender. The pay was adequate for the long hours I worked. I got to sleep in on most days, and my boss was chill. His name is Marky. and he owns Marky's, the bar I work at. The place was small and barely up to health code, but I considered it my second home. My first home being the apartment above the bar that Marky's leased to me. My ability made my job a little bit easier, especially when the state sent me a minor to make sure we were IDing people. I was always at the top of my game. Their spy wouldn't make it 3 steps from the door before I turned them away. When their fake ID didn't check out either, they sulked right out of the bar. Every time a kid came in with their iconic fake ID, they got turned down. When they protested that they were of age, I told them that the cops could come down here and verify the age for themselves. That usually got them to stop mouthing off and leave. Now tonight was like any other night at Marky's. I'd been in the middle of a small rush around midnight, how it usually was that time of night, slinking drinks after drink. I was also alone, as usual, seeing as I was a seasoned bartender, and I really didn't need a backup or another bartender, even though the extra help might have been nice. Marky couldn't afford it, though. It was busy enough where I didn't see she slipped in. I had turned around to blend the third frozen margarita for Gladys, one of Marky's regulars. I was stuck in a conversation with her about how good it was to be youthful. Gladys was still full of shit. She always went around telling everyone she's only 46, but her true age sat right above her head in a big, bold number saying 59. When I turned back, I noticed the woman sitting there at the end of the bar. As it became second nature to me, I glanced above her head, slightly seeing her age. The frozen margarita almost fell out of my hands. The woman had been typing away at her phone, so she didn't notice me fumbling. I quickly handed Gladys her margarita before hesitantly trying to recollect myself. What can I get for you tonight? I asked her as confidently as I could muster. I rubbed my eyes, pretending to be a little sleepy. In reality, I rubbed my eyes to make sure I was seeing her age correctly. Above the woman's head, it stark white letters as the number above was 300. At first, I thought I misread the number. After all, she looked like she must have been in her early 30s, not 300. But alas, the number 300 was still firmly there. Her hair was long, wavy, and dark shade of ebon, as if her hair was the night sky itself. She had glimmering brown eyes that had this hunger behind them. She wore a shade of red lipstick that popped out at you. For her pale complexion, the color really looked good on her. Ever since I've gained my ability, the only ages I've seen were normal ones, only go into the 3 digits once, when I met a World War I veteran. This woman had to be the oldest person I've ever seen. Against my better judgment, I chalked her number up to be somehow being a fluke. There's no way someone could actually live to 300 years old, right? I'll have a Bloody Mary, she said with a toothy smile. Something about her perfect white teeth sent shivers down my spine. It irked me. Anything else I can get for you? I asked, remembering it was rude to stare, although she seemed to relieve in the uneasy look in my eyes. Names are a powerful thing, you know, the woman stated as she rested her chin on the backs of her hand. I could tell she was toying with me. I chuckled as I grabbed a tall, skinny glass and a stalk of celery. Well, my name has no power to it. I'm Harry. It's nice to meet you. I stuck my hand out to her. She smiled and let out a little laugh before taking my hand and shaking it. Harley. Harley, what a fitting name for the woman in front of me. She wore a leather jacket over a plain white t-shirt. If I had to describe her in one word, it would be a biker girl. I like you, Harry, Harley said, flipping some of her long hair behind her shoulders. A flirtatious action made a knot form in my stomach. Thank you, I said, forcing myself to smile, handing her her drink. I took a second to look her over again before starting to tend to the other customers in the bar. I made sure to keep an eye on Harley the whole time, my curiosity getting the better of me. About an hour later, one of the regulars, Jeb, started hitting on Harley. He was 6 beers deep and couldn't tell his ass from a water hose. Come on, sweets. Come back home with the Jeb. I'll treat you right, sugar. We'll have a fun time, he flustered drunkenly as he wrapped a hand holding a bottle of beer around his shoulders. I could see Harley's features contort into an expression of uncomfortableness. All right, Jeb. I started slinging the towel I was using to clean the glass over my shoulder. I'm cutting you off. Clearly you had enough to drink tonight. Jeb waving me off and brought his free hand to Harley's boob, where he squeezed it gently. A look of shock and fury filled her face. Jeb, I said tensely, grabbing the beer out of his hand. Leave him alone, man, the 18-year-old who came in with Jeb shouted from the next to the drunken. The only reason I let him stay at the bar is because he only ordered a can of Coke. Normally, he never caused trouble when him and Jeb came in anyways. Jeb must have met this guy in college parties since he's only 22. But with a name like Jeb, I expected him to be 63. Jeb was getting more handsy, and I could tell Harley was going to snap at any moment. The both of you, get out of here now, before I call the cops on you for giving me a fake ID, and Jeb, for letting you stay here, knowing you were a minor. He, like a deer caught in headlights, the kid went, how did you... I cut him off. I don't tolerate harassment of any kind in my bar. Get out now. Jeff's friend grabbed him off the Harley before quickly running out the bar into the streets. Harley dusted herself off while staring at the direction the duo ran off in. Then she looked at me and shot me an icy glare. Thanks, but I could handle it myself. I shrugged in response and went back to cleaning up around the bar, and the rush had ended a while ago, and only a few Parthons were left, a couple, Gladys and Harley. When I turned back to Harley, I noticed she was gone. In her place was a $5 bill, and she left the drink glass. Not one drop had been spilled from the Bloody Mary. I shrugged the ominous feeling that Harley left behind and went back to closing duties. I kicked out a few drunks out of the bar, called them taxis, and then closed Marley's down for the night. The sound of heels crunching against gravel took my attention off the back door to the bar. A tall shadow stood in the alleyway entrance. I tucked my keys between my fingers and tightened the grip on the garbage bag in my other hand. Like I said earlier, a familiar voice echoed off the walls in the alley. I can handle myself. Harley stepped into the edge of the light coming from a street lamp behind her, whipping something off of her face with her sleeve. Blood. Her mouth was covered in blood. She had a crazy look in her eyes. Her once white t-shirt, now a rusted brown color. She smiled at me again. This time, 2 huge fangs hung in her mouth. The word vampire flooded my mind as her age started to shine more intensely above her head. The woman before me was literally 300 years old. A 300 years old vampire. She was on me quick, giving me no time to prepare. Or defend myself. The garbage bag and keys in my hands fell to the ground as I was stuck in her strong grasp. Harley pulled me back, polo down, and clipped the area where my neck and shoulders connected, sending weirdly pleasurable tingles down my spine. I braced myself for the pain that would come from the bite when she eventually stopped sucking me. I heard her hiss. A hot drench of iron filled my nostrils. "Don't worry, Harry. I'll make it quick." Harley just jammed her jaw shut as she bit down. I screamed in pain as I imagined all the blood being sucked from my veins. My body withered away into nothing but a shark. Harley standing over my corpse, full and satisfied with my exoneration. I started crying as my mind flooded with regrets. How much better could my life have been if I never told anyone about my ability? Maybe my parents wouldn't have think I was crazy and a disappointment. Maybe I could have gotten a girlfriend, settled down, gotten a nice house, and had a kid. In my high hysteria, I noticed something. There had been no pain at all. Harley had released. Harley had released me when realization struck. When realization struck, I spun around in confusion. My neck was fine, and not a single blood cell was taken from me. Harley stood behind me, chuckling to herself, as if she should have known better. In the palm of her hand was a sharp fang. It belonged to her, seeing as a nice gap was in the place where her upper left calf once rested in her gums. "Oh, fuck," she yelled out in an angry laugh, stomping her black leather Doc Martens on the ground. Harley looked at me in the eyes, a deep-seamed hatred behind her eyes. "Your goddamn choice."